All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all glory and praises to Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai, by Hashem HaKodash, the honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, honors and salutations to the hopeful elect, pushing his word in true sincerity. All right, this is the brother Tawab Rakah from GMS Los Angeles / Inland Empire, coming back with another video in the spirit. And once again, Thawadi Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai, by Shira HaKodash, for opening my eyes to this truth. Allow me to wake up another day and putting the spirit on me to do another lesson in hopes to edify the hopeful elect. Okay, so in this video, what I want to go into is the power of the tongue. Okay, and how we have to be very mindful of how we use our tongue. You know, that goes for when we out there on the highways and byways, okay, when we out and about, you know, or we at work, wherever the case may be, okay, we gotta be extremely cautious with how, you know, we use our words around people, because seeing that we are out there on the highways and byways, we speaking against this society, we're prophesying that this place is going to be destroyed. Okay, we're telling the people that the Lord is going to bring all sorts of judgments on this place. So knowing that, you know, we have, you know, we're a target. You know, the scriptures say, they that depart from evil maketh themselves a prey. So it's not wise, you know, to be out here and saying things that could, you know, because Esau has that term, that phrase, inflammatory speech. In the sense it's true, because words can lead to, you know, words can lead to serious things. Okay, especially if the person that's using those words aren't really thinking about the consequences that could happen, you know, when using those words. Because, you know, it's different people out here, it's different spirits, you know, that we're in the midst of, you know, and certain people have trigger points, and when you say certain things, that can lead to a bigger problem. You know, it could lead to, you know, altercation. Sometimes words can lead to people getting put to death, like these rappers, for example. You know, you got these rappers, and they you know, and they raps, you know, which we listen to some of the rap music, you know, but, you know, the rap music doesn't have no hold over us, you know, because we know what it is, we understand what it is, whatever. But at the same time, these guys that makes these, you know, these rap songs, what they always speaking about? They're speaking about death majority of the time. And that's why a lot of these artists end up dying, you know. They end up dying at a very young age, okay, because that's the main topic in their music. You know, that's the main theme in their music. And when you listen to some of their music, and, you know, you hear the, you know, the sound, and, you know, how, you know, the frequency, the vibration, you know, it has that eerie sound to it, you know, because Jake is on a low level right now, man. Jake, you know, Jake has no, what's the word I'm looking for? Jake has no kind of, morality. You know, I'm talking about Jake in the world. Jake in the world, they really don't have no morality, man. You know, because anything they think is moral is based off either what these rappers do or what Esau says they supposed to do. Okay, which, you know, we know Esau, he's not a moral man either. You know, he's the wicked. Okay, so Jake doesn't have much here to, you know, to look up to, and, you know, to have a good example to follow. And that's why the Lord has his prophets out here. But, you know, even then, you know, 2/3, they're not going to see it. They're not going to get it, you know? So I'm just doing this lesson for brothers, for us, you know, to reminder, you know, as a reminder for us, you know, especially you new brothers that's new to the faith. Be mindful what you say around people, what you say to people, okay? Because it's beyond this thing is beyond our emotions. Now, you may have to tell certain people certain things sometimes. You know, somebody get in your personal space, you may have to get, you know, you may have to be a little assertive. Hey, you know, back up, you know, what and whatnot, right? You know, because we ain't no, you know, pushovers. We ain't, you know, we ain't gonna allow nobody to just walk up on us. But at the same time, you know, if somebody's just talking shit or somebody's trying to egg you on, try to, you know, bait you into some bullshit, you know, that's where we got to apply the scriptures. We got to move in the spirit, okay? Because the flesh is not going to work, you know. Like I said, you know, that's the last resort. Somebody put their hands on you or try to put hands on us, we have the right to defend ourselves, okay? But if somebody's just talking and somebody's trying to, or they doing, you know, gestures, trying to, you know, get under your skin, you know, we just gotta ignore the you know, people like that, you know, and let the Lord deal. So with all that being said, Salaki, I didn't want to ramble too long. I'm gonna get right into it, and I pray this is edifying. So the first scripture I'm gonna start with is Proverbs 18:21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof. You see that? So words or sometimes words hurt more than a punch to the face. Okay, sometimes words hurt more than a cut, you know, from a blade, because words go to, you know, words go beyond the flesh. It goes to your soul, your spirit, you know, and that's what the Bible does. That's what these scriptures do, you know, especially, you know, because we're in this wicked ass flesh. There's times that we may not be, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? We may not be, we may be a little off, you know, off the road a bit, you know, and that's why these scriptures are here to you know, to realign us, to put us back in line. Okay, because this flesh is wicked, you know, and when you know, by acknowledging that we're wicked, that this flesh is wicked, okay, we constantly have to examine ourselves, okay, and this is one of the things, how we examine ourselves is how we, you know, how we speak, you know, how we using the tongue, because the scriptures speak about being seasoned with salt, okay? Because when you go through situations, you know, when you be in arguments that lead to altercations or leads to people, you know, trying to make your life difficult because, you know, the words that you might have said to them or the words they said to you, it made you feel a way, and now all of a sudden there's a you know, there's a you know, friction that can potentially become a problem that could, you know, put you in a rough spot, you know. And here it is, we you know, the truth, us serving the Lord, being in this truth, we're already going down the straight gate, which is already a difficult path in itself. So why make things more difficult on ourselves, you know, by not being wise with the words that we use or how we express ourselves, you know, even when we're angry, right? Which, you know, it's going to happen. Brothers are going to get angry. Brothers are going to say things out of anger, you know, but it can't get to the point where, you know, You just saying any damn thing, man. You saying things that you can incriminate yourself, you know? You know, you making threats towards people, and all of a sudden somebody can take that and you know, report you, and you know, saying, oh, this man threatened my life, blah 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 blah. Not saying brothers are doing that, but I'm just saying these are the things that we gotta think about. And you know, we starting with our apostle on down here at Great Millstone, you know, Esau got his agents out here looking for anything to, you know, try to demonize us, man. Okay, which at the end of the day, you know, he's not going to be able to you know, demonize this word. Esau ain't stopping nothing. But at the same time, you know, us being in this truth, you know, we gotta move the right way, man. Okay, we gotta be spiritual. We have to be spiritual in this faith, man. That carnal is not the carnal mind is enmity with the Most High, man. Okay, so how we use our words in this place, that's a major a thing that we have to be aware of. All right, this is Proverbs chapter 15 verse 1. It says, a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. Okay, so you know, you gotta know, and all this comes with discernment, because there's a time to, you know, when we speak and we exert ourselves, right? There's the times where, you know, you know, we may cuss Jake out, cuss Esau out, cuss whoever out, you know. Hell, you know, brothers cuss each other out, right? So there's those are times, there are times where, you know, those lashings may happen with the tongue. But then there are times where we have to tame the tongue. The tongue has to be tamed. Okay, because you can't just do that to everybody out here, man. And like I said, all that comes with discernment. Okay, some people out here, you don't know who the fuck you talking to, man. Okay, you don't know the person that you're talking to is on the edge, is about ready to snap. Okay, you don't know, you know, you don't know what that person's been through. You don't know what that person's going through in their mental, their mind frame. You can be talking to a complete nut. You know, because truthfully, you know, when we go out and about and we're around these people, we don't know who these people are, man. Okay, and going, you know, that movie, The Matrix. There's a scene where you brothers that are familiar with Matrix, y'all know, it's a scene where Morpheus tells Neo that anybody that's not with us everyone that's in the Matrix is a potential agent, man. Okay, so we got all sorts of people around us. They may look normal, like regular people, but they just may be agents. We don't know. You know, that's why the Lord told us we got to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Okay, wise as serpents, harmless as doves. Okay, because Esau, like I said, you know, he's subtle. You know, he has all sorts of agents and the snares out here trying to trap us up. You know, so we got to be cautious and we got to be careful and mindful of how we moving and you know, because everything we speaking, even when we speak in a harsh manner, we bring the scriptures. Okay, that's why it's imperative, you know, when we at camp, you know, to bring the scriptures out. We got to let the scriptures come out, man. You know, so that way, you know, everything that we're saying can be, you know, backed by what the Bible says, man. Because that's how the Lord is going to justify his elect. He's going to justify the elect because the elect are speaking his words, which is out of the Bible. All right, I'm going to read it again. It says, a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. The tongue of the wise useth knowledge aright, but the mouth of fools poureth out foolishness. You see? So words can be weapons, man. You know, it could be a weapon for good, and it can be a weapon for evil, depending on how it's used, man. Okay? And even Esau, you know, that whole freedom of speech, they got a thing where, yeah, you know, people have freedom of speech, but you can't, you know, freedom of speech doesn't mean you can go into a large crowd and incite that crowd to do violence. Because if you go and incite a crowd to do violence, okay, you can be held accountable for wherever the crowd, where it's a riot, or there's some kind of unrest that happens because of the words that you use to incite that crowd. You could be held responsible for that. Okay, and if you out there and saying crazy wild shit, threatening people's lives or threatening to do things to people, whatever the case may be, that can, like I said, that can lead to incrimination. And again, once again, I'm going to make this clear. I'm not saying anybody's doing that. I'm just saying these are things that we gotta be mindful. We can't just be saying anything just to be saying it. We gotta really, stick to what the scriptures say. Speak within what the scriptures are saying. Of course, brothers are fiery. Some brothers are fiery, right? So sometimes the scriptures are gonna, the brothers are gonna use harsh language at times, right? So-called harsh language, these people perceive as, but as long as we bringing everything back to the scriptures, that's where it matters. That's where it counts. Not going on our own personal feelings and getting caught up in being in all those emotions, man. Because like I said, Esau is looking for any little thing, any little crack, any little chink in the armor. That's what he's looking for, man. Okay, so we gotta be extremely cautious, when bringing this word out, man. Just stick with what the scriptures say. Esau, these other nations are going to go into slavery. Okay. Yep, we gonna put the foot in their ass. All right. Lord gonna give his elect that spiritual power. Okay. Yeah, we gonna speak boldly. Okay. Anything outside, talking about, going to people's houses and whatever the case may be, that's unnecessary. Okay. And when we go out there to camp, we don't go out there with fucking body armor and fucking Glocks and Tech 9s and AK-47s or wherever the fuck, man, like these other guys are doing, man. Okay, it's no need for that. Okay, the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. Okay, because we're way behind, man. We're weak here, man. We don't have no power here. We don't have no military here, man. So it's foolish to think you're gonna go up against the enemy, and the enemy has all this technology. He has all these things at his disposal, ready to wipe these people out. And you think you gonna come up against that with some low level weaponry, man? Nah, man. So like I said, I just wanted to put this out there, for you brothers, especially you young brothers, man. Okay, be mindful how you moving out here, man. Okay? Don't be out here being an asshole, man. All right? Be wise, man. Use wisdom. All right? So, yeah, with that, I'm going to give all glory and praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem HaKodash, the honors to the apostles, and the elders of Great Millstone, honors and salutations to the hopeful elect, pushing his word in true sincerity. Shalom.